And we are back with our virtual seminar, Redefining the Future of ESG in Thailand. And in this session, we have been joined by executives from CPAC, SCG, BIG, and Indorama Ventures who will share their thoughts on the topic, New Approaches for the Greener Future, Innovative Technologies and Strategies. Joining us today here are Kun Weerakorn Saitep, Digital Construction Director for the Concrete Products and Aggregates Company Limited, or CPAC SCG, which is a provider of development or comprehensive construction solutions and is also an advocate for social responsibility. Also joining us today is Kun Piyabut Charuphen, Managing Director of Bangkok Industrial Gas Company Limited, or BIG, a leading global industrial gas company who provides integrated industrial gas solutions with best-in-class safety and reliability. สวัสดีครับ
ครับ สวัสดีครับ สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีครับ
Possibly joining us a bit later would be Kun Anthony Watanabe from Indorama Ventures. But for now, let's get started with talking a bit about your viewpoints on ESG and also what you feel the ESG plans are and your ideas about how you plan to move forward. Starting with you, Kun Saitep. According to your ESG 4+ plan, how does your company reduce the carbon footprint of cement production, which we know is quite significant, and what are your plans for moving forward?
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, I'm very honored to be here and share about SCG roadmap. That you might know that SCG adopt ESG to be part of our business ongoing, and also announced our low carbon roadmap that we're going to be the net zero by 2050. First of all, in the business that I'm working for in cement and green solution, we also like one of the most carbon emission business. And we have the low carbon roadmap we call 7 levels that we establish the low carbon roadmap with Global Cement and Concrete Association. This is the global player who draw the roadmap in cement and concrete business. We have 7 levels. You may see about how to reduce carbon in process and also carbon in products and also low carbon in terms of the construction. There are 3 categories that we are doing now. And also we have like the process, 7 levels that we call like how to reduce the clinker content in the product and how to do the carbon capture and how to reduce the carbon in construction industry. For instance, like smart design, effective design, and also use the low carbon product in the construction that we have to work with the designer, the developers, and also the constructors. This is the roadmap that we are planning and announce to the public that SCG is going to do that, and everyone in the company has to comply and try to think about low carbon economy that we're going to go and achieve in the future.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Kun Saitep. Before we move on, I'd like to invite to join us here Kun Anthony Watanabe from Indorama Ventures, the Vice President and Global Head of Environmental Sustainability. Hello, Mr. Anthony.
Jack, and greetings, fellow panelists. Nice to be here with you via technology.
Thank you very much for joining us. We were just talking a bit about the roadmaps for each organization with regards to implementing ESG strategies. We've heard from Kun Saitep. At this point, maybe I can ask you, Kun Anthony, to give us your company's roadmap in incorporating ESG in your strategy.
Sure. We have a six-pronged approach that goes from, I would say, very mature active areas, like our eco-efficiency projects across our 140 factories around the world. So these are energy efficiency, water efficiency, waste efficiency. We track them on a data basis. We have a set of guidelines for our site heads. They need to have a 7-year payback and an internal carbon price of $20. And that's what they use to see if this project makes sense. So that's at 1 o'clock under green projects. And then as you go clockwise, it gets earlier stage. So renewable energy, for example, we have a lot of renewable energy generation in Thailand and India. And we're looking at large scale procurement in the EU through what's called a virtual power purchase agreement, and in the US. At 6 o'clock, our mechanical recycling, we're very well known for that. I'll talk a bit more about that, but we have a very significant global footprint of recycling PET, and that's a stalwart of Indorama. Advanced recycling is newer. It's actually like chemical recycling, taking the polymers and breaking them down into their monomer constituent parts and starting the process again. So that's a very new kind of technology. And so on towards the carbon capture and storage, our coal phase out. So from 1 o'clock to 12 o'clock, it's mature, and then it gets more early stage, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. Kun Piyabut, how about you? Can you tell us a bit about how BIG is incorporating ESG in your strategy?
All right, thank you very much. Very glad being here. BIG, actually our product is coming from the air. So you guys thinking, how cool is that? So we get products from the air. So we defining ourselves as the climate technology company. So you can see products like oxygen, nitrogen, those kind of stuff, hydrogen that we have done here. And basically what we are doing is to provide the innovative solution. So our fundamental is actually, you can see that oxygen during the the pandemic. Last year, we provide oxygen to COVID patients and community. So our pillar of the ESG, basically we have the ESG matrix. So simply called grow, the first pillar. Second pillar, conserve. And third pillar, care. So grow, what we mean is that we're growing the business by provide sustainable offerings to the customer. Believe it or not, currently our close to 60% of our revenue coming from sustainable offerings. So the products that we provide to the industries and help them become more productive, energy efficient, and sustainable. Conserve, normally in the process of separating air, we don't pollute anything, but we consume electricity, and that's fossil fuel. So what we're trying to do is that, what is the alternative electricity that we can consume so that we can reduce the consumption of electricity, thereby reducing the amount of fossil fuel. The third pillar is care. So not only safety that we provided to our organization and we hold it as a top priority, diversity and inclusion that we have done in our company, and also community. As last year we provide the oxygen support to Klong Toi community, actually together with the Bangkok governor last year when he was not elected yet. So we have done all this and become our pillar for providing the business strategy. So that would be some snapshot of what we have been doing for the ESG in our roadmap.
Okay, thank you, Kun Piyabut. Now I'd like to ask all of you how you've noticed the environmental risks have, especially those associated with climate change. How are those affecting your businesses, and how are you responding to deal with these risk factors? Perhaps I could start with you, Kun Saitep.
Thank you. As you may know, we have been working in construction industry for 100 years. And we have been working with many parties or stakeholders in construction value chain. And so far, everyone seems like have more awareness how to be a good citizen to help the world. Yeah. And currently, there are many early adopters who are using digital construction and who are aware about how to build the green building, how to build the green environments, and the well-being space for the clients or the customer. That's why many people work with SCG, whether or not we have the low carbon products or recycling content in the product that can save the resources, natural resources, and can reduce the carbon emission. That's the first one. The second one is about the technology in construction. I might say the first one is digital construction. We adopt digital construction, or we call BIM, Building Information Modeling, to do the virtual design, collaborate with designers and contractors to see the virtual building before we build it. And when we do like this, we can reduce the waste in the construction because we know exactly about how many materials, what kind of materials that you use, and the construction method that we're going to use. This one will be very beneficial for us because we can reduce some sort of reworks or something that you miscommunication among each party. If we can fix that, that's going to be very helpful to reduce the waste. And on top of that, we also search the global practice in construction. For instance, we try to increase the level of off-site construction. That means we try to do everything in the factory, in the assembly plant, and we reduce the number of workers or number of execution at the site. That means you can reduce the waste, you can reduce the dust, or you can reduce the traffic in the construction site. Because if you can do in advance about the construction that you assembly in the factory, and then when you install at the site, you can reduce the time and also reduce the traffic. This is also the construction method and construction techniques that we gonna adopt in the construction industry in the future.
Okay, good. And Piyabut, you mentioned that your resource is the air around us itself. So these environmental impacts from climate change, what kind of risk factors are you dealing with when it comes to your business operations?
Well, as I said, so the process from separating air is actually emit no pollution, but again requiring electricity. And as you can see, electricity cost in Thailand right now, how much is that? Maybe 13 US dollars cent per kilowatt hour. It is climbing very high, skyrocketing. This is challenging. And you know why the electricity cost is going that skyrocketing? Part of it, I think, main reason of that probably because you know the cost of the environmental that currently we have been suffering from. So we're dealing with this. What we have been doing actually is that how can we avoid or if not minimize our dependence on the fossil fuel electricity. So what we have done is that this is the sustainability in action, I could say. We have done the new air separation plant. It's just up and running in Maptaput since October. Instead of using 100% of electricity from fossil fuel, we reduce the amount of that by 30%. And instead, we consume what we call the coal energy recovery from LNG. Otherwise, that they would have wasted against the. So this is what we have tried to do, and as a result, I think we can create some independency from the business operations. So that's what we have done together with PTT.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. Kun Anthony, I'd like to ask you about how do you at Indorama sustain business with innovation and technology for a greener future or a more sustainable and inclusive future?
Thank you, Jack. I'm learning a lot from my colleagues. SCG and BIG are doing really interesting things, very attentively. So we have a long history at Indorama of actually tracking our emissions. We have 11 years we've been producing a state sustainable development report. And a part of that exercise is managing risk. A part of that exercise is seeking new technologies to reduce our emissions. And that's a very big endeavor every year. And all the reports are on our website, they're public. There's also a summary version. So I share that because that shows that there is an institutionalization around our ESG practices that has been embedded in our organization. And in order to do that at a corporate level, we have to go and collect data from the sites. And so everybody's involved all the way down to our different factories around the world. Another thing is when you talk about risk, there is, of course, the perception around plastic. So we work very hard on a few levels. One, to distinguish PET bottles from other types of packaging. So you see here, for example, that glass bottle and aluminum actually have a much higher carbon footprint than a PET bottle. This is somewhat counterintuitive. People think that they're more recycled and more recyclable. That's not the case when you take into consideration transportation, discard, raw material sourcing, and so on. So a virgin PET bottle already is more sustainable than aluminum or glass. And then the next level is PET is not like other plastics, because we talk about plastic pollution. It is an issue, but our product is made to be remade. It is a reusable, recyclable product. And we work very hard to with governments around the world to set up collection infrastructure so we can bring the recycling infrastructure, avoid plastic pollution, and keep those bottles into the economic stream.
Okay, thank you, Kun Anthony. I'd like to turn to Kun Saitep, ask you a bit about the challenges you faced about implementing ESG projects during the COVID pandemic, and has this changed now that the economy is starting to recover?
Yes, during the pandemic, we're quite tough because, you know, the construction site have a lot of spread of the COVID, and we have the limitation to access the site. That's why we have to utilize a lot of technology in order to succeed the project as we committed with our clients. As that many things that we have to utilize technology in order to accomplish the project that we committed with the client. That's one thing that we have to figure out how to fix that. And as you may know, in order to achieve to low carbon economy, only SCG as the material provider or solution provider, we cannot do it alone. We need the collaboration with many parties in order to achieve the target together, like the contractor, the developer, the project owners, or the site engineer, or the material provider as well. So if everyone collaborate together and put the same commitments, that we gonna do it together. I think the whole of industry that we work together, we can achieve that. Because you might know that SCG is not only do the business or in construction. We have petrochemicals, we have SCG packaging, and the 4 SCG ESG 4+ that you may know, net zero, go green, reduce inequality, and also embrace the collaboration with plus with transparency. That means if we have to do that, we have to work together, and we have to concern about the communities around us, the people who work with us. And you might know SCG adopt this philosophy across the country or anywhere that SCG has the footprints in the industry across this region. That's why we are very committed, and we are very ambitious to do this business. Because we think about sustainability. SCG gonna last long in the next 100 years or not, right? Or many risks that if we work with the global players, we export our product across the globe. If someone care about carbon, whether or not we have the low carbon product, right? And about the roadmap that we have to work with many investors, they also want to work with the manufacturer or the business that you are the greener, or you also help to save the world. This is one very important thing that we have to go in the future.
Okay. Kun Piyabut, when you're talking about extraction of oxygen and hydrogen from the atmosphere, you mentioned that that process itself doesn't produce greenhouse gases, but you said, but you are trying to reduce CO2 emissions in your own way. Could you enlighten us a bit about that?
Sure. I think so. All of this start from the corporate purpose first. So our corporate purpose is we make the world more productive, energy efficient, and sustainable with infinite innovation from the air. So I think our tagline from the purpose is infinite innovation from the air. So what we are doing, actually we have been doing this for several years, is that, so how can we utilize and employ technology? Not only gases that we got from the air, but technology of employing those gases innovatively to a variety of segments. For example, if we go to the wastewater. So wastewater, basically, you can use chemical, you can use air, you can use anything to treat wastewater. But we use oxygen aeration with the computerization model and the digital platform to measure the outcome of using oxygen innovatively to treat wastewater. So this is totally sustainable because oxygen from the air, and then once it's treated, you can recover it as oxygen. And so totally this is the sustainable ways of managing the waste, which is going to the sustainability. So this is just an example of the corporate purpose and what we do in action.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to turn to Kun Anthony. You mentioned about how virgin PET bottles are actually in their own way, more sustainable than other materials. We do often hear, though, about plastics as a major component of environmental pollution. Could you tell us a little bit about whether there are some interesting developments with regards to sustainable plastics?
Absolutely. First, Kun Piyabut, I would really like to talk to you about green hydrogen. That was a compelling slide you had there, and it is on our technology roadmap. Not yet economically feasible, but if you're building capacity here in Thailand, I would really want to follow up with you on that, see how we can collaborate.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. So, Jack, everybody on this session watching is about to become more sustainable in 2023. And that's because the Thai FDA has passed a new policy that allows recycled PET to be used for food and beverage packaging. So this is the result of a collaboration of a number of companies you see here and Indorama and others working closely with the government. And this law was passed just a few weeks ago, June 17th. What that means is in 2023, you'll go to 7-Eleven, you'll pick up a bottle of water or Coke or something. It will have 25% recycled content and a 20% lower carbon footprint. This is a step change for Thailand because it's gonna create more economic value for the recycling stream and will reduce pollution. So this is where policy and regulation can really drive innovation in the market. And it's a perfect example of how private sector should work together with government for the progress of all, social progress, environmental progress, and economic progress.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kun Anthony. Well, I'd like to now ask all of you, there may be business owners or companies out there that are SMEs that are listening to this and thinking, sure, this sounds great, but you have to have the scale to do it. How would you advise companies that are SMEs to incorporate ESG in their own businesses? I'd like to open this up to any of you to answer that.
Okay, so let me start first. I think you have to view the world of doing business, including ESG, as an alternative, I would say a must-have alternative. Otherwise, that would be your cost anyway. Right. It's going to incur your cost anyway. For example, this some information I think some of you may have known CBAM, right? So this is the carbon mechanism program that I think it will implement or have already been implemented from the goods that export to Europe. And if you don't, well, you're going to pay tax, for example. It's that simple. So if you're going to do that in your own business and you don't include ESG, then that's why it's going to be your cost. Now, if that's going to be your cost and you have not foreseen how high is that and how far is that, why don't we foresee that in order to do this, including ESG in your business, it may be a little bit more cost, but in the end, you can be more sustainable. So that would be my view.
Okay. Kun Anthony, do you have an opinion on how you would approach or advise an SME about ESG strategies?
Yes, I thought a lot about this question, Jack, because it's a tough one. And I think I'm going to draw on my personal experience because back in Canada, before moving to Asia, I was running a small sustainability consultancy. So we had to hustle in order to work with big clients. And I think the spirit of what we did was very much around partnership. When you don't have the scale of a big company like Indorama, you've got to be very creative and find shared value through partnerships. And I think that makes the work more fun. It makes it scalable, and ultimately it makes the impact greater. So I think that's one thing. And then I like this idea of looking ahead to other policies that are affecting you. Like it's both risk and opportunity also for small business, right? So opportunity is the new policy from the FDA it's not a risk, it's an opportunity that even small businesses could play in terms of collection. So I think they'll look at everything both through a risk and opportunity lens and seek partnerships actually to make the solution scale. That would be my high-level feedback.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
I would like to add more that Anthony and Kun Piyabut said about, I don't want to mention about the cost to be a good people, but if you want to be the good people, the mechanism to work with the SMC is very important. I think the government sector should incentivize or provide incentive to support the SME. For instance, we work with the small SME like the grocery shop across the country to collect the recycled products, Jack, and then they have the cost to collect it, right? And after that, how can we collaborate and recycling it in the industry? This one for the example. Or in terms of the waste in the municipal waste that SME generate quite a lot, right? How they can manage, right? The cost of waste, right? Everyone want to save the world, but I think at the first stage, we want to embark this, the incentive or privilege that we can support and work with the SME is very important. Otherwise, in the future, if we cannot establish and we have the gap between the big corporate do this, but the big corporate might be only 20% of the country. But the SME probably 60%, right? How to make SME adopt this particular practice, that's very important that we have to work together with the government sector. Yeah.
Okay. And we're talking a lot about, for example, environmental factors. Now, the other factors with ESG with regards to the social dimension, when it comes to addressing inequality, for example, and or the governance side when it comes to protecting the rights for workers, for example. Can you give us some examples about the initiatives that each of your companies are doing to address these dimensions of ESG?
I'll go first.
Okay, Kun Weerakorn.
Yes. To uplift the construction standard in Thailand is one thing that we are doing now. Because we have seen in the global practice in construction industry, in developed country, they very advanced. You might see about technology in construction. But in Thailand, sometimes we still do traditional style or conventional style. And one thing that we try to reduce inequality and embrace with our ecosystem to develop is try to allow them to utilize our platform and work together. And we share the knowledge that we have in global practice and let us to develop with us. We do upskill, reskill with them, and we share the platform to work with them in order to make them more competitive in the future. If the country more open and we have many investors work in Thailand, we don't want to have our labor do only non-skilled job, right? Because you get very less payoff. But if you are the skilled labor and you really advance in terms of workforce, that's you can be better off in terms of your well-being. This is one thing that we are trying to doing now. And on top of that, as I mentioned about the community who work with us, not only ecosystem, we also, the people who work in the area that SAG had footprint, we try to make, share, and develop the people in that side that they have we take care about the water management in agricultural sector, or we provide some sort of the occupation and let them work with us in some perspective that they can have more revenue and more income in order to uplift the well-being. This one.
Okay, and Kun Piyabut, how about BIG? What are you guys doing about this?
Yes, actually, well, in the past several years, you may have remember we had the Tham Luang cave that the 13 soccer kids trapped in the caves. And we provide both oxygen and our experts to rescue them, working together hand in hand with the Navy SEAL, help them out with our oxygen. That's the pride of what we have been doing. And since then, not only on any single event, but on the ongoing basis, how can we basically make our technology and innovation to help the sustainability to the community? I just mentioned for the oxygen for wastewater, not only for the industry that we have been working with them together, but this is the, if you look at the picture, we contribute oxygen during the COVID pandemic that I just mentioned. last year, and even today, we still work together with our rescue agents if they really need our oxygen. Then, and this is not limited to the, patients in the hospital, but last year and now, the ones who basically been quarantined in the community can be access to oxygen, without any waiting moments. So it's something that we have been doing. And last but not least, I think in the near future, with the upcoming hydrogen, will provide better environment. We're talking about a PM 2.5 in the future, whether you're over here, up there, middle class, upper class, or lower class, you can access to, better quality of the air with the hydrogen.
Okay, thank you. And Kun Anthony, how about you and Indorama? What kind of social or governance initiatives have you been working on?
Well, IVL has a long history of CSR. We have a 7-figure CSR budget in our sustainability team. We have the IVL Foundation that operates independently. And then a number of the sites around the world, many of which are in developing countries, have their own CSR programs. So we're constantly seeing things of different types of community involvement. We recently set up a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. And this is something that I sit on. Very happy that to see this happening. There's a lot of engagement and excitement around this, what could be done. And these kinds of things drive positive change in the company, new metrics, new levels of transparency, and new levels of equality. So for instance, in our head office, we have about 500 people, 60% are women. Around the world, that number is much lower for Indorama. So that's something, because we have a lot of manufacturing, of course, so we're working on changing that very deliberately. So these are the kinds of things, as soon as you start to measure and understand, then you can absolutely make an impact. So CSR, a long history, DE&I, a newer and important area for Indorama.
Okay. I noticed earlier that you had an eagerness to perhaps work more with understanding with BIG, with their hydrogen arm, about how you could perhaps collaborate on that. I wanted to ask if you've had opportunities to work with other companies or organizations upstream or downstream when it comes to these ESG efforts?
Absolutely. The partnership spirit that I suggested for SMEs is not exclusive to SMEs. So we have, let me give you one example. We're building, with the World Economic Forum, we're building a net zero industrial cluster at our largest site, which is in Texas. And to do that, we're engaging some of the other heavy emitters in that region. And then the idea with that cluster will be to de-risk new technology testing, maybe attract some financing from the U.S. government, and do some best practice sharing across those heavy emitters in that region. And one of the things we're looking at there is carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So that is a more mature technology than green hydrogen, but still comes with a lot of risk, and we're working hard to understand. Of course, carbon capture and storage is a cost. Carbon capture utilization has some type of revenue attached to it, so that is our preference. And for that, we have partnerships with different companies that we're looking at, both consultants to give us an analysis, then actual providers. And that happens here in Thailand, that happens in India, that happens in Europe. It's definitely a way of operating that is quite standard for Indorama, because even for a big company, the stakes are high and the risks are great, and the importance is very significant. So we all need to be working together to drive those solutions.
Definitely agree with that. Kun Weerakorn, how about with you? SCG, it seems to be everywhere here in Thailand, being around for 100 years. Can you tell us a bit about some of the collaborations that you've worked with regards to ESG?
Yes, first of all, we have, we call CECI, Circular Economy, and we work with, collaborate with many parties in construction industry, and also who work with SCG chemicals and SCG packaging, that in terms of to adopt ESG and how to make the showcase or the use case to show to the public that together we can do it. And we want to be proven that the result if we do it together, because in the value chain, there are many parties. Right? If all of us send the message from upstream, the material providers, and the operation, and the user, and finally the the operation who take care about the building and take care about the waste demolish. And this particular, if we do it together, and we can streamline about the carbon emission or in terms of waste reduction, and we utilize the natural resources less than in the past. So everyone, if we can do it together, it's going to be very helpful for our country and for our world. That's why you might see the collaboration with government sectors, private sectors, and also NGO. Everyone can contribute and can prove that together we can do it.
Okay. Kun Piyabut, what about you with BIG? Can you tell us a bit about some collaborations that you've had with ESG?
Sure. I think before I think that, I think one thing that I might, express my idea is that when we're talking about ESG, it's very challenging to do it alone. So this is my principle. So because ESG basically covers a lot of areas, and that's why we really need to collaborate. So the case that we have done in action, if you could look at the monitor, the first one we have been doing here in Thailand together with PTT. That's what I call LNG air separation plant, where you avoid or minimize the electricity consumption and instead utilize coal energy of LNG that PTT import to Thailand. So that's up and running in October last year. Next is on the hydrogen for mobility. That hasn't happened in Thailand yet, but elsewhere in the world, our parent company named Air Products basically collaborate with a lot of automotive companies and the oil and gas companies, so working on the hydrogen for mobility. On the right-hand side, we call it hydrogen for power generation. Finally, instead of using fossil fuel, green hydrogen, and thanks to Anthony for your interest. Green hydrogen will be, the winning solution for producing power, and we're working with a lot of power companies around the world. So these are just, certain examples that we cannot do it alone, and we really need a lot more ecosystem to work together.
Okay. Now, of course, these efforts to incorporate ESG strategies have a cost. I would like to ask each of you about how do you manage these costs and, with balancing with running the business, trying to meet profitability targets. Starting with you, Kun Anthony, about what do you think when it comes to addressing the issue of significant costs of these efforts?
Yeah, that's definitely a recurring challenge. The first part of my answer will be that the drive for sustainability and GHG reduction comes right from the top. Our group CEO, Mr. Lohia, the founder of the company, our CEO, DK Argawal, our most senior people, they recognize this as a major strategic driver. So it has the full legitimization from the top and repeatedly so. That helps when you move down to a site level and you're planning projects. I mentioned it a bit earlier. What we did a few years ago, we did a bunch of efficiency projects, and then we realized all the low-hanging fruit were picked. So we set up an SOP. We said, okay, rather than a 3-year ROI, you have now a 7-year ROI. So if you're looking at a project and it pays back in 7 years, you can go ahead. And if you're in a jurisdiction without a carbon tax, you use a $20 internal price on carbon to calculate that payback. And this SOP has really helped to spur a lot of activity beyond the low-hanging fruit. Now we have a major initiative underway. I'm heading to Europe on Monday, and we're kicking off a focus on our top 25 sites around the world, which produce 80% of our production, almost 90% of our GHG, so very significant. And that has the full support of our C-suite. It has financial backing, it has attention. So these are ways that we make sure that the priority signature projects have the financing to get realized.
All right. Kun Weerakorn, can I ask you about what are your most ambitious targets when it comes to ESG for SCG?
For SCG, we are very committed to be the net zero carbon by 2050. The most important thing that I think a couple of months ago, we are committed with many parties in construction, we call TCMA, Thai Cement Manufacturing Association, work with 6 ministries to commit that we will reduce carbon emission 1 million kg by 2023. This one thing that we are committed. And I think on top of that, when we talk about the cost of ESG, our CEO Kun Rungrod also very committed to announce about we're gonna do the low carbon economy, and he mentioned about how to achieve it together. In my view, I think it's not about the expense, Jack. I think it's about the investment. One day, if we do the business, and in the future, there might be carbon tax, there might be CBAM, and there might be the new tariff barrier against the industry who is not the green industry. I think it's going to be problematic to do the business in the future. That's why if we start from now, we invest from now, and we foresee in the future, I think we are ready about to be prepared to face or something might come in the future if we want to do the business sustainability. Yes.
Okay, great. And one last question for Kun Piyabut. Just real short, what's the most exciting ESG development that BIG has coming in the near future?
I would say hydrogen. So as you know, hydrogen abundance, I think it's the most abundant element in the universe, not in the world, in the universe. So how can we leverage such abundance for the value for the world? So that's I think everyone knows, but to get hydrogen attractively and economically for the benefit of the sustainability, that's the challenge in the past, but it's no longer a challenge now, and I'm sure in the future is decreasingly challenged. Why? Because we work together with a lot of parties, and that's what I call ecosystem. So instead of we doing alone, we welcome any collaborations and ecosystem that we can do together with the same goals, different ideas, work together. So this is the most challenging but exciting, because if we make it happen in Thailand or anywhere else, and currently there are a lot more projects. Actually, parent company of BIG actually invested, our products invested $15 billion now in the green hydrogen projects. And we hope that will be in the near future, next few years, in 2030, that will become even more sustainable ways of this. So this is what I'm looking for. And I hope that everyone here and everywhere else looking for as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to all of our panelists for this very interesting discussion. Mr. Anthony Watanabe, Vice President and Global Head of Environmental Sustainability for Indorama Ventures Public Company Limited. Kun Weerakorn Saitep, Digital Construction Director for the Concrete Products and Aggregate Company Limited, SCG.
It's a pleasure.
And Kun Piyabut Charuphen, Managing Director of Bangkok Industrial Gas Company Limited, BIG. We really appreciate your time and your very insightful answers to these very important questions. And we hope to hear more from you in the future about these exciting developments in ESG.